Greetings, nature nerds, and welcome to Ask an Ecologist. My name is Suzanne Simpson. I'm an ecologist with Bayou Land Conservancy, and each week we take your questions about the outside world and what you're curious about what you're seeing in your backyard or in your neighborhood. We got a lot of good questions this week, so thank you all for submitting them. And I am going to dive right in with a question about coconuts. So John Lane submitted the following question. He says, can you tell us everything you may know about the coconuts that wash up on our beaches? So for those of you watching elsewhere, we're in Houston, Texas, so the beaches that we're talking about are specifically Galveston and on the Gulf Coast. So about the coconuts, where do they come from? How come they don't grow here locally? And finally, how can I volunteer with Bayou Land Conservancy? Great questions, John. Let me answer the coconut questions first. So I have to say, I was delighted by this because coconuts are not my area of expertise, which means I got to learn something new about a different kind of plant species. So it's not uncommon to see coconuts washing up on places like Galveston and Corpus Christi, and it's difficult to determine the genesis of any one coconut because there are a couple of different options that they could be appearing from. So coconuts have been pretty widely cultivated, both domestically here in the United States and internationally. And the history of that plant, of the coconut palm, is so ingratiated, so intertwined with human cultivation that even botanists have a hard time determining and agreeing upon where the coconut palm is indigenous to and where it is as a result of human cultivation. But it is absolutely possible for a coconut to float up on through the Gulf of Mexico onto our beaches from Mexico or from beaches further south like Latin America or even Brazil. So there are a couple of different destinations that it could come from. It also has a decent amount of cultivation in the Caribbean and in Florida. So those are also sources for the coconut that you could be seeing. Evolutionary botanists have looked into whether the coconut specifically evolved to be buoyant, to float so that it can have seed dispersal. And to the part of your question that was wondering why they don't grow here, we do have suitable climate in the southeastern United States, but chances are there are a couple of evolutionary mechanisms that prevented it, including geographic isolation or geographical barriers that limited seed dispersal. So it could be from anywhere, just about anywhere in the Central and South America, but it's thought that it may have evolved to be buoyant so that it could disperse more widely, but over time, the prevailing opinion is that coconuts are the way they are, very hard, very difficult to break open, and kind of buoyant because they can survive falls from the rocky ground without breaking open. So that's sort of the prevailing hypothesis for why coconuts are functioning that way. So thank you for the question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn more about our friend the coconut and what is actually a really, really interesting history of that plant. Now, you also asked about the best way to volunteer with Bayou Land Conservancy, and the best way to do it is to get involved with our Spring Creek Greenway Ambassador Program, which is a 5-module free adult nature education course that we do every fall and every spring. And normally I'd be able to hit you with a date and how to sign up, but because of the coronavirus issues, we haven't determined exactly how we're going to be doing our ambassador program in the fall. I think we're going to be able to do it in some form or fashion. It might be limiting class size or whatnot. But as soon as I have more information about that, I will drop that here on the Ask an Ecologist thread and get you plugged into our mission. So thank you for the question. Thank you for your interest in getting involved. Okay, next question came from Tracy Fritsch, who says, I'm seeing lightning bugs. How likely would it be for me to find the glowworm larva? There are a couple of species that are known as, that are called the glowworm. It's a fairly common nickname, but I believe you're talking specifically about lightning bug larvae, so I'll specifically address my answer towards lightning bugs. And so if you're seeing lightning bugs in your area, check some moist grass nearby, and that's going to be your best bet in finding the glowworm larva. And if you see something glittering in the grass, you're on the right track. So you should be able to find it. Maybe take a headlamp out there and see if you can light up some larvae. So good luck. Jackie Smolik asked, why are there so many gnats this year, and why are they so hard to get rid of? So gnats meaning fruit flies, and I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. I've also had a fruit fly bloom in my house. I don't know why there are so many this year. There's usually a lot of different factors that play into population mechanics year in and year out. But I will say that the best way that I've found to get rid of them in my own house is multiple warmed up dishes of apple cider vinegar with a few drops of dish soap. That will attract them and then trap them in there. Change it out every couple of days. Just dump the apple cider vinegar into the toilet and just flush it down. And then you should, over time, be able to reduce the population. And of course, you want to make sure you're taking out the trash. You don't have fruit on the counter and whatnot that's going to attract fruit flies. But I feel your pain. I'm with you. I have also noticed a huge increase this year, and that's the best way that I have found to reduce those populations. Okay. Raj Shepard asked, I recently found an American giant millipede, and he was amazing. My curiosity got the best of me, and I picked him up, and it burned my finger and thumb. Can you tell me more about this incredible creature? Any medicinal uses for the liquid they secrete? Awesome. Well, many of us know millipedes don't sting or bite the way that we think of with scorpions and centipedes, but they do have a defense mechanism, and unfortunately it sounds like you fell victim to this defense mechanism, which is whenever they feel threatened or they want to warn off predators against eating them, they'll secrete this noxious liquid from their body that is, it's comprised of a lot of benzoquinones, which are, there are some industrial chemical uses for that compound, but it does cause dermatitis or, a little bit of skin irritation. The discomfort should be temporary. It can also cause some temporary discoloration. American giant millipedes are actually starting to become kind of a popular pet in the pet trade, and the best practice, as far as I can tell, is to probably just admire them from their terrariums and not hold them too much, because they do have a tendency to secrete that liquid if they feel threatened. So I saw some evidence about your question about the medicinal uses. I saw some evidence that it might have a component that's used as like a skeletal muscle relaxant, but I'm not clear on whether or not really chemically that's being used in the medicinal industry. I think predominantly what it's used for in nature, it's not just giant American millipedes that do that, but there are also species of beetles that secrete that same kind of liquid to warn off predators. So it's a good way to get people to stop touching you or predators to stop touching you. And I'm sorry you got the brunt end of that, but it sounds like you have a really good attitude about it and are staying curious about nature. So thank you for your question. Okay. Will Howard asked, I'm kind of wondering if cattle egrets were in Texas before European colonization when cattle were introduced. Were buffalo sufficient? So for those not familiar, cattle egrets are a really common gregarious heron that is white in coloration. Its breeding plumage has some orange along the crest of the neck and along the feathers. And to answer your question, Will, cattle egrets have had one of the largest increases in distribution over the 20th century, and a lot of that is because they're gregarious. They are able to disperse, like they're fairly migratory, but they also are extremely adaptable, and they have some level of commensality with grazing animals. And so as cattle and grazing has increased, in the United States, they were first seen here around the 1940s, 1950s, and since then they've spread throughout the southeastern United States, and their distribution still does seem to be increasing. So chances are, if you have a detention pond in your area, if you have a wetland around, they're able to occupy a lot of different types of habitat, both prairies, as well as forested areas. So they're really adaptable species that has helped their distribution expand over the years. And I do think it's a really interesting question. Will brought up buffalo because long ago we had buffalo as our primary grazers here in Texas, and so we obviously don't have a significant population of them anymore, but it would be interesting to think about how cattle egret could have interacted with buffalo back when they roamed our Gulf Coast prairie here in Houston. So good question, Will, and thanks for putting your thinking cap on for that. All right, so we blew through all of our questions today, a lot of good ones. Your PSA for this week from me is to remember that it is June and it is really hot. So if you're watering your plants, please don't forget to water yourself. If you're going outside, make sure you're wearing a hat, sunscreen, and bug spray. The mosquitoes are really out in force. They have come back alive. And I hope you're still able to get outdoors into some shady areas where it's safe for you to do so. But make sure that you are taking stock of your safety and your level of hydration, and bring snacks with you as well if you're going outside. So remember, you can submit questions by emailing us at info@bayouland.org, or you can comment on this thread. And you can see previous episodes of Ask an Ecologist on Bayou Land Conservancy's YouTube channel. So my name is Suzanne Simpson. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.